Chapter 25, Hot Buttered Toast. Even before he'd opened his eyes, Winston knew that something very strange and unusual had happened. The last thing he could remember was being outside in the freezing cold, with the angry wind and snow roaring all around him. And he remembered being tired. Very tired indeed, and freezing cold too. The sort of cold that makes you feel frozen from the inside out. But that wasn't the case now at all. Winston was, he considered it for a moment, he was snuggly. Really warm and cosy, and yes, very snuggly indeed. He sniffed. His whiskers wobbled with excitement. What was that lovely smell? It smelt like someone very nearby was cooking something very delicious. Where on earth was he? He opened his eyes and looked around him and gasped. What had happened? He wasn't outside in the street in a hidey hole, which was where he woke up most mornings. He was in a bed. A perfect little mouse-sized bed with soft flannel sheets, a thick blanket and two great big plump pillows. There was even a little patchwork quilt keeping him toasty. Winston wiggled his toes and looked around. He seemed to be in a little bedroom in a house where everything was just the right size for him. There were tiny books, a small armchair, and, as Winston peeked over to look down the side of the bed, on the floor was a pair of tiny slippers which Winston knew, just from looking at them, would fit his feet perfectly. What is this lovely place, he wondered. A house made just for a mouse? Was he still asleep? Was he dreaming? Then he heard a noise, a great stampede of thuds and whoops, of footsteps and voices, human voices. Now be careful on the stairs, Oliver. What on earth has got you so giddy this morning? There were some very excited squeaking noises before Winston heard, What letter, Oliver? Oliver, thought Winston. Who was Oliver? Just then there was a rattling noise. It sounded like someone was right outside his room. Winston burrowed down deep beneath his bed covers, so only his eyes were peeking out above his blanket. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The entire far wall of his room swung open and a little boy's face appeared. The little boy was in his pyjamas and his curly hair was sticking wildly up on end. His cheeks were bright pink and his eyes were sparkling with excitement. Mum, Dad, he cried, come and see! In the doll's house there's a mouse! A real mouse, fast asleep in the attic. There followed a great commotion as more faces joined the little boys to peer in at Winston. Two were grown-up faces, and the other was a smaller face. All belonged to humans in pyjamas and in dressing gowns, and everyone looked like they'd jumped out of bed in a great hurry. Goodness, said a grown-up face with a bristly moustache under its nose. There is a mouse in the doll's house. Father Christmas said in his letter I would find a friend in the doll's house, and it's a mouse, squeaked the little boy. What letter, Oliver? Said the other grown-up face. This one didn't have a moustache, but had its hair up in a headscarf. The other very small face didn't say anything. She was too busy sucking on the sleeve of her nightie. The little boy quickly handed over a small sheet of paper. This letter, he said, shivering with excitement. It's from Father Christmas. I found it in my stocking this morning. Look! The two grown-ups read the letter, and as they did, their eyes grew bigger and bigger with astonishment. Dear Oliver, thank you for your letter. I believe it had rather an exciting journey to get to me, but the most important thing is that it found me in the end. I understand from your note that what you would like more than anything this Christmas is a friend, someone to go on adventures with. If you go downstairs and peek in the attic bedroom of that lovely doll's house, you'll find a little someone there waiting for you. He should be a very suitable friend. He's really good at adventuring. I should think he'll be fast asleep when you find him. He's had quite a tiring evening. Take great care of each other. I look forward to reading all about your adventures together in your letter next Christmas. I'll maybe pop it in the post a little bit earlier next year. With best Christmassy wishes, your friend, Father Christmas. Well, I never, Oliver, exclaimed the grown-up with the headscarf. A mouse! The little boy beamed. I think we'd all better go and get dressed, and then our new friend can join us in the kitchen for breakfast, said the grown-up with moustache. Do you think he'd like some hot buttered toast? He does rather look like he could do with a good meal, said the other grown-up, smiling. Oliver told his new friend that he'd be back for him as soon as he was dressed and had brushed his hair, one of the grown-ups added. And the whole family scampered off to get ready for the day. When he was quite alone, Winston sat up and blinked. He wasn't a street mouse anymore. He had a warm home and, if the lovely smells were to be believed, a yummy breakfast, lunch and dinner, all ahead of him. He had a friend called Oliver. How extraordinary. Something crinkled at the foot of his bed, and Winston scrambled about in the blankets until he found what it was. A stocking. A little mouse-sized striped stocking, and in it was a tiny letter written in the smallest mouse-sized writing he'd ever seen. Dear Winston, thank you so much for delivering Oliver's letter to me. I can only imagine what sort of an evening you had trying to deliver it. It must have been very exciting, but dangerous too. What a kind and brave mouse you are. For such a tiny creature, you have an enormous heart, one which understands that nobody should ever be left out or forgotten, especially at Christmas. Happy Christmas, Winston, and enjoy your new home. With love, from Father Christmas. Winston folded the letter carefully and held it very close to his chest. Then he snuggled back down onto the blankets in his new bed, in his new house, in his new home, and for the first time in his life he felt warm from the tip of his nose to the end of his tail. And as he lay there, he wondered what adventures tomorrow would bring. The end. Merry Christmas.